If you thought California's gas prices were really high, well, wait until they increase the gas tax in the state to nearly $2 a gallon. That's right. By 2026, that's what's going to happen. Coming up, I'll tell you about a reckless, flawed proposal from California politicians and what we're doing to fight back. I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California, and we know gas prices in California are absurdly high, but under a flawed new regulation that's backed by the California liberal politicians, gas prices are about to get a lot higher. In fact, we're going to have nearly $2 a gallon added to our price of gas in the form of a California state gas tax. Let's first start out with prices overall. This is the latest calculator from AAA. These are the gas prices in the state of California. I want to show you that the national average is this red circle here, $3.60 or 61 cents, compared to $5.26. So, that is a buck 63, 64, 65, actually 65, a buck 65 higher than the national average. Now, there are times during the year where our gas is $2.50 higher than the national average. I really feel sorry for folks that live in the Bay Area on a number of accounts because they're looking at $5.78 in Napa. Humboldt County is $5.81. You got over here in El Dorado, $5.53. So the average is $5.26, but it can be much higher in your area. Compared to $3.60 nationwide. We found gas in other states like Texas, Mississippi, down in $3.15 a gallon. That's as of right now in terms of the latest numbers this week, national numbers versus California. So we already pay a premium. What Gavin Newsom and the politicians are saying falsely, claiming falsely, is that somehow the difference between what we pay in California and the national average is all due to price gouging by oil and gas companies. Okay, so recognize in a moment, I'm going to prove to you that that's all garbage. It's BS, absolute BS. Newsom is a liar, a frigging liar. The guy ought to just absolutely be mocked at every turn for the lies that he's telling. But he's always gotten away with it because California liberal politicians are protected by our California media establishment. The media outlets out here, the newspapers, do not ask tough questions, do not hold these politicians accountable. So, but for a moment, let me just respond in the most, I think, effective way before I give you all the facts and figures. But just the most effective way to respond to Newsom claiming that gas prices in California are a buck 65 to $2.50 higher than the national average, all because oil and gas companies are trying to price gouge. Can he explain why that oil and gas companies, and no doubt they have a profit motive, but oil and gas companies are only price gouging in California? Why wouldn't they price gouge across the country? Why is it that they're only doing it in California? The reality is, when you take a look at the profit margins in California, it's bare bones for oil and gas companies, and refineries usually lose money most months of the year. Now, let's go through why we have high gas prices, and I'm going to get to this big tax increase, okay? Because I need to get you to the $2 a gallon. That's right, $2 a gallon state gas tax levy that we're facing. But here's why our gas prices are higher in California. Number one, we do have the highest gas taxes in the country. More on that in a moment. Number two, we have constricted the flow of oil into our state by eliminating domestic production in California. In 1984, California imported only 5% of its oil. In 1984, we only imported 5% of our oil. Today, it's 58% imported from bad companies, countries like in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, uh, all of those tankers of oil are coming into California, and you have to pay for the transportation costs in terms of the tanker cost. And they spew all sorts of CO2 emissions as they're coming into port. It's really bad for human rights. It's bad for the environment, and it makes us dependent upon these foreign countries for our oil supply. Again, we used to produce so much more in California and get our oil domestically from Alaska as well. But now we are absolutely dependent upon foreign countries for our oil, and the transportation costs associated with that and environmental costs are significant. In addition to the gas tax being high and the flow of oil being choked off from the state, and us having to import at higher costs from foreign countries, we also see a third reason why our gas prices are high: regulations on refineries. Because remember, oil doesn't get put into your car unless you're just as a lubricant, but mainly it's oil being refined into gasoline. And refineries are also hyper regulated by the state of California. We have seen no new refineries built in California. The last permit for a new refinery in California was 1978. Jimmy Carter was president back then. I know that Biden seems like Jimmy Carter, but yeah, that's a long time ago, 1978. We have lost a third of our refinery capacity in California since 2010 alone. The last refinery shut down just a few months ago in Long Beach. The owners of the refinery said they can't make money being refineries because of the regulation. And so they decided that converting their refinery into self-storage was more profitable. When you're making more money storing junk than you are refining oil into gas, you know that you have a problem with government regulation. It's not price gouging. No, it's over-regulation, costly mandates, taxes by liberal politicians who don't want you using gas in the first place. Whenever the gas price goes up, Gavin Newsom and liberal politicians celebrate because they don't think you should be emitting carbon into the atmosphere. But let me tell you why the price is going to get a lot worse, and that we are very soon, in the next 3 years, going to see a gas tax imposition by the state of California gas tax will approach $2 a gallon. Here's the headline from Fox Business: California's secret 50-cent gas tax coming in the next 2 years. There is a Air Resources Board, CARB. They're an unelected body that's imposing all of these Green New Deal, greedy new steel mandates on our economy, particularly choking the supply of energy. They're the ones that mandate that, we have to ban gas-powered cars in the state of California, gas-powered leaf blowers. They even want to ban your gas stove. But they have a new regulation. In addition to all the bans, they have something called the low carbon fuel standard. And the low carbon fuel standard is a regulation that makes the refining of gas infinitely, exponentially more expensive. And they're not going to allow any gasoline to be sold in California unless it is refined in compliance with that regulation. Now, mind you, there's no proof of any environmental benefit here. And in fact, I have always argued in other podcasts that a lot of these environmental regulations backfire. A perfect example is you choke the supply of oil production in California. It causes us to now have to import oil from Saudi Arabia, where that hurts the environment on that side because their regulations are less compliant, less clean than ours are. And then you have all the CO2 emissions from the tankers coming into port, and they're sitting out off the coast of California waiting to come in the port, spewing all sorts of carbon into the atmosphere. Again, anytime an environmentalist on the left says they have an idea to fix the environment, just smack them. Okay. They have no legitimacy anymore because they have screwed up so many times, not only the cost of living and our quality of life, but they've also dropped the ball and screwed up on the environment as well. Anyway, so Fox Business talks about the low carbon fuel standard that's being imposed by CARB that will increase the cost of gasoline by 47 cents next year and 52 cents by 2026 per gallon. That is a lot of money, but hold on, it gets worse. And I'll tell you in a moment why we're going to hit $2 for gas tax. But let me share with you the low carbon fuel standard impact to refineries. Here's 2024, and the cost is $93 million would be the cost to implement this new regulation. And this is just to the refinery. By 2025, it's $1 billion. 2026, $1.2 billion. And if you notice, massive increase above the cost that regulations already impose. We already have we have the most stringent low carbon fuel standards in the nation. So this is above the billions and billions and billions of dollars of costs that we already are paying for California gasoline to be refined at I would argue, not an appropriate cost benefit to the environment level. But take a look. The numbers just continue to spike. And if you notice they start going down in 2043, you know why? That's because CARB projects that we're going to ban gas cars. And so therefore, everything starts reducing by that point because people are using less gasoline. This is insane. These numbers are absolutely unsustainable. Now, let's get to the gas tax. California Taxpayers Association, California Tax Foundation notes that the gas tax is increasing to 59.6 cents as of this July 1st. Now, remember, the gas tax, state excise tax, is actually on autopilot. It goes up every year without a vote of the legislature automatically. That's what the politicians enacted in 2017 under SB 1. And I always said, this is like the zombie tax. The tax will just keep going up every single year automatically. So this year, as every year we've seen, even during the 2020 government, the economic shutdowns, the gas tax will be going up every year on autopilot. But this is misleading because this is not the only gas tax that you have to pay. And so I want to share with you the actual gas tax. You're paying right now $1.43 for the gas tax in California. $1.43 is what you're paying. Now, can I go back and share with you the cost differential between AAA and the national average? Okay, let's see. It's about $1.65 difference. And yet, the gas tax in California, $1.43. So 22 cents off. Let's go into the details, though. How do you get to $1.43 today? Well, as I just mentioned, 59.6 cents is the new gas tax as of July 1st. Then there's something called the cap and trade tax. Now, they call it a fee, but it's a tax. Cap and trade is a tax applied to any carbon form of fuel. So they tax the oil producers and the gas refiners based upon their carbon content of their energy source. And that's an extra 28 cents easily per gallon. It actually can get into the 30s and in the low 40s, depending upon the year. But 28 cents right now, cap and trade tax per gallon. Then you have a sales tax. Oh yeah, the sales tax is actually added into your gas price. On the basis of a $3 a gallon base price, you're paying 12 cents per gallon. Gets more like $4 or $5, that number also goes up because it's a percentage. But we'll just stipulate the $3 a gallon at 12 cents. The CARB regulation cost, that's what we were just talking about, various regulations applied by CARB on gasoline, and that would include the low carbon fuel standard, is 23 cents today per gallon. But as I mentioned, that's going to go up by about 50 cents plus. And so we're talking about 52 cents, 2026. That would be a 75-cent per gallon hit. The underground storage regulation is 2 cents, and the federal excise cost is federal gas tax is 18.4 cents. So if you add all that up, in 2026, less than 2 years from now, you're going to be paying about $2 per gallon in a gas tax in California. We cannot sustain this. And think about that $2 per gallon. $2 per gallon of taxes times a gallon that's 20 gallons capacity. Let's suppose that you actually gas your car once a week. A lot of people gas up more than once a week. But let's say that you're one of the lucky ones that only gases up once a week. That's $2,080 in gas tax that you have to pay for one driver, for one car per year. And by the way, that is after your income taxes are paid. So when you actually think about what you actually have to work and earn, you're probably talking about $2,500 to $2,700 of actual income that you have to earn before you actually can pay that $2,080. And that's one gas tank per week for just the government cost in California. Now, other states don't have this crap. Other states have much more affordable gas because, as I mentioned, they don't constrict the supply of oil. They're not lining the pockets of the Middle Eastern barons. They also don't regulate the hell out of the refineries. And, of course, their gas tax, the regulations, the charges, the hidden fees are much lower there. We don't have to do this to working families in California. This is a choice by liberal politicians who pretend like they care about the pain and suffering of working families. But you know, the gas prices, they hit working families the hardest because working families, particularly lower income families, have to drive farther because they have to go farther away to get affordable housing. It's the most punitive form of taxation, hitting the middle class the worst. At Reform California, we have been trying to fight to give some price relief at the pump. We don't believe that we can sustain $2 a gallon. That's why in 2018, I led the charge to repeal the state gas tax, and it would have repealed all these other charges as well, the cap and trade and all these hidden fees on your price of gas per gallon. The politicians put a deceptive label on our ballot measure and basically stole the election. The voters did not know what they were actually voting on. They didn't know it was the gas tax repeal. And so we believe that we need to go back to the ballot box with a gas tax repeal. In the meantime, while we get that campaign ready, we do have an initiative on the ballot, the California Taxpayer Protection Initiative, in the November election. We're urging you to vote yes on that ballot measure, which will make it harder for the politicians to raise our taxes, all forms of taxes. They want to do a mileage tax. Our initiative bans a vehicle mileage tax, a VMT. It also requires that any new tax increases have to be put on the ballot for a public vote with honest ballot titles. It's a game changer in that regard. But at the end of the day, we have to educate voters as to why they're paying so much at the pump, and we have to warn them that it's going to get a lot worse if these liberal politicians enact these new gas tax regulations. Help us get the word out. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment in the section below, and contribute online at reformcalifornia.org. That's reformcalifornia.org. We've got to work together because these gas prices will be absolutely unbearable. And we're not talking about 5 years from now or 10 years. We're talking about less than 2 years from now, 18 months, 2026. We have to work now. We have to spread this warning now through this video and, of course, getting people engaged in November's election. Join us at Reform California. I cannot do this alone. Our movement needs to grow. Grassroots supporters up and down the state of California working together to take back our economic destiny. Until next time, Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California. Help us break through the censorship of the liberal media. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and smash that notification button so you can stay up to date on all the developments in California news and politics. Also, please visit the website, reformcalifornia.org, for ongoing news coverage and to join one of our campaigns in the fight to take back our state. If you can, please sign up as a volunteer or chip in a contribution. This episode of Reform California with Carl DeMaio, paid for by Carl DeMaio for State Assembly 2024.